up next, we have got safety and the customer experience. So we've got Claire Harkness, who is Operations Director at Coventry Building Society Arena. We've got Ben Phillips, Head of Sales and Marketing at TEAMcard. Scott Cullimore, Channel Director International for Evolv Technology. And Gillian Murphy, Director at 5 Stars. And my right-hand woman is going to be moderating. So Cass and the crew, welcome on stage.
I'm just going to give a bit of a sigh of relief. Good morning, everyone. I'm Cassandra, for those who haven't met me in the room. And I also came a long way, so I'm the other Australian in the room as well. But look, as Katie mentioned, we're here to talk about safety and customer experience. And I am joined with an absolute fantastic group of experts here who will each bring unique insights on the challenges and opportunities in balancing safety and the fan experience in modern sports venues. So rather than I introduce everyone, Claire, would you like to start and introduce yourself briefly?
Yep, so as Katie said, I'm the Ops Director at the Coventry Building Society Arena, which is a bit misleading because we're actually a stadium, a 32,000 capacity stadium, but we're also an arena. So we're one of the UK's unique venues that we've got both on site. And we used to be the RICO. Everybody knows us as the RICO, which was a 17-year partnership. So we're CBS Arena and we're home to Coventry City Football Club. I'm the Ops Director, I'm the Safety Officer, and with that I have this responsibility of being the person on the safety certificate that people keep highlighting that I've got a minimum 2-year sentence if something goes wrong, which is always a pleasure to know at the back of your head at every sports event. We've hosted concerts and we're really looking forward to hosting the Women's International England team, the Lionesses, at the end of the month as well, who'll play South Africa. And we also have this 10,000 capacity arena, which simultaneously we can have events on at the same time. So last year we hosted ASDA in the daytime, and then we had Birmingham City versus Coventry in the evening, along with 1,700 Christmas party revellers, and that's the way our business rolls.
Thanks, Claire. Jill?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gillian. I'm the Director of 5 Stars. So we are fan experience specialists. So what we do is we develop fan experience strategies across the entire fan journey. I've been entrusted by some of the biggest global sporting events and brands, previously working on the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, the FIFA Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, Live Nation, and most recently I developed the fan experience strategy for UEFA Euro 2024 across all 10 venues and cities, and very excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben, so I represent TEAMcard. So we are venue access management specialists, so that's the way we bill ourselves. So essentially we have solutions, both hardware and software, that manage access control, accreditation, visitor management across sports venues. So we have just over 40 sports venues across the UK, across football, rugby, cricket, horse racing, motor racing, everybody here scanned in on TEAMcard readers today. And also if you came to the welcome drinks at the Aviva, you scanned in there as well. So just a little flavour of what we do, but usually you'll find those bolted to the walls of turnstiles at stadiums around the country.
Hi, I'm Scott Cullimore. I'm Channel Director for Evolv. Job titles can be a bit misleading. I look after all of our international partnerships outside of North America. So that means that I look after venues such as the MCG down in Australia, all the way through to all of our European venues that we look after. Evolv is the leading technology provider for AI weapons detection and screening services globally. What we've enabled is a fan experience in terms of security screening that's non-intrusive and frictionless. Fortunate enough to have some customers in the room that I'm sure would be more than willing to talk to you about it.
Great. So let's kick off with the questions. So with the increasing push for stadiums to host more alternative events, do operators need to rethink their approach to safety in order to attract a broader market?
So I think that we've touched on it, that we can have, because of the multi-purpose use of our stadium, we can absolutely have a different audience from a Wednesday to a Saturday. And we've got to have that really at the forefront of our mindset and as a safety team, because we're looking at completely different demographics across our site. We have to look at the way people will come to our venue, and whether there'll be a localised audience, which we know, for example, with the Lionesses coming at the end of the month, we know that that won't be the case. There'll be very much a wider field. So with that, we have to look at how and we're working on a model just now with that particular event of 1 adult to 3 children, or 3 minors, whereas for a football game, it's incredibly different. What I'm finding just now is that we have to deal with a lot of people who have got sensory needs, people who have, we've got an ageing population, as you can imagine, with our team, which has got a long-standing history, but also we've got 22% new season ticket holders, and 17% of them were women this year. I don't know whether there's been a couple of attractive signings or not, but we've seen a massive increase in that, and families coming through our door on a match day. So again, we've had to adapt to our our search policies have had to change because of that. Our way that we train, customer focus is a massive issue for us. We're working increasingly with West Midlands Police on initiatives across violence against women, and informing people, both our hospitality staff, our stewards, right across the board. And then we have, which we've seen from COVID times, young ASB groups who are filming themselves on social media, pushing each other downstairs. This year we introduced safe standing across our stadium. So again, people who want to stand and people who don't want to stand, we're working across those environments. How that'll impact us on a concert will be completely different. So what we had to do was we had to work with the club to say that actually we don't want safe standing in areas that we will sell as a concert. So we are limiting your capacity on safe standing to these areas, because actually we have to think of that wider picture constantly in regards to the multi-use of our stadium, and the same with hospitality.
Gillian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as well, because historically we look at the profile of the fan more from a security and safety perspective, but it's really important to also use that in terms of the experience, right? So obviously looking at the different demographics and the client groups that come to our venues, from general admission, hospitality. We obviously have accessible, spectators as well, but it's everything from your F&B offering. You would look at, a football event where your football fan wants a pie and a burger. So, to implement something like a vegan burger or a mushroom burger just wouldn't really go down particularly well with that client group. So I do think the profiling of the fan is incredibly important across the entire fan journey, and not just from a safety and security perspective.
Yeah, I'll probably just extend on what Claire mentioned, which is more around kind of the physical infrastructure of the venue. So I think gone are the days, and I'll focus on football just to begin with, gone are the days where, one Saturday every 2 weeks where you get a full house in is enough to sustain kind of a sort of profitable venue. I think a lot of the time what we're finding, and there's been a lot of conversation this week about diversifying the events that you have at your venue in order to generate more revenue, but obviously when you diversify the type of event, that also means that you diversify the type of people that arrive at your venue. And so having the right physical infrastructure is important to accommodate everybody, right? So if your football fan that turns up at 3 o'clock on a Saturday every week, they know what the infrastructure of the venue is like because they're there most days. And so they just scan in, they make their way in, they know exactly what they're doing. But when you start introducing women's fixtures or concerts, all of a sudden that demographic changes, and all of a sudden you need to make sure that your infrastructure can accommodate the people that you have arriving at your venue. So making sure that you're not backing yourself into a corner with the technology decisions that you're making or the infrastructure decisions that you're making, I think is really important, and kind of leaving yourself open to be able to diversify the events that you have and make sure that you can service those different audiences, I think is very, very important.
Scott, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think from a physical security point of view, it's challenging, right? When you diversify events, you potentially diversify the threats. So the layers that you have in that need to be able to flex to meet those different threat profile needs. Threat profile need from a football event here on a Saturday, for example, where people are potentially bringing flares into the standing area, is potentially very different to when you've got Oasis playing here next August, right? So you need to be able to...
more flares.
But yeah, well, maybe, but that's a consideration, right? How do you flex that, and then how do you balance that against the fan experience and the demographics and the people that are coming? Because there's different expectations. And I think that there can be learnings from venues that are already multi-use, like the CBS Arena, right? You guys already done that and have done that for 20 odd years. There are other venue operators within the room that host sports events. They might be hosting Premier League darts one night, and then the next night Peter Kay's coming in and doing a comedy show. Two different demographics, two different types of people that are coming. And maybe their security infrastructure and even the F&B offerings and everything else is reflective of those fans that are coming.
Yeah, so safety is clearly evolving to meet our new demands then. So moving on to the next one. How can fan feedback and data be leveraged to continuously improve safety measures and fan experience? Gillian, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, so, I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday who has a technology for surveys, and often we look at surveys as the primary data to leverage to then mitigate risks. And don't get me wrong, pre-surveys and post-event surveys are really important, but from my perspective I am also looking at your CRM systems, right? So if your venue has a contact centre, that is where all of your complaints are coming from, and that really does paint a true story about those pain points and what you're not doing particularly well at. At the same time, I'm looking at Google reviews, TripAdvisor reviews. What are people talking about on social media? And what we do is we bring all of that information together, interpretate that, and then put a strategy in place to be able to really scale and provide solutions for short-term wins, but also long-term success. So, it's not a cookie cutter approach. It can be quite complex, and completely understand that a lot of venues can struggle actually once you've got the data. What do you actually do with that? And that's certainly what we do.
And Ben, you deal with a little bit of data at TEAMcard. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think we probably approach it from a slightly different angle. In fact, I think the data that we're able to collect probably dovetails with the data that Gillian would collect. So you've got the kind of proactively provided fan feedback data that fans might actually provide to you about the experience that they had. But equally, with the right technology, there's obviously that kind of passively provided data that fans will provide as well. So that could be anything from where they're entering the venue, at what time they're entering the venue, where they're moving within the venue. And you can start to then use that data to make sure that, A, the venue is safe. So from Claire's perspective, if she's got people that are, gravitating towards one area of the stadium or one gate in particular, we might need we need some more stewards there that can pass people on to busier or less busy gates, so that we're reducing queues, improving safety, ultimately improving the fan experience in that respect as well. But equally then, from that passively provided fan data that you can collect from entry, you can understand, okay, where are fans entering the stadium? Where are the best places for my F&B stands? So I can actually generate the most revenue from where people spend the majority of their time. And we see it a lot across all of the different venues that we work with. A lot of it can do with where the transport is arriving from, where people are actually approaching the stadium from. How can I make sure that my infrastructure is organised correctly so that I've got a nice good spread, not people waiting for ages to get in, and then ultimately then dovetailing that with the right technology to get them in quickly. So I think it's an interesting combination between sort of proactively provided fan feedback and then obviously the passive feedback that you can gather through the collection of the right data at the right time.
Scott, how's Evolv looking at this?
Yeah, pardon the pun, but it's evolving, right? We're going from analog systems in a lot of these venues to now digitally connected systems that can provide you this passive data, right? So you can look at, like Ben said, how many people are coming to your venue, for what event types, what do arrival curves look like, how do I staff that, how do I operationalize that, what does my F&B look like, how can then I change that behavior potentially? So, historically at venues, things like comedy shows have got really harsh arrival curves. No support act, Peter Kay goes on at 8 o'clock, everyone wants to get in at 5:02, no one wants to spend any time in your venue because they're literally coming to that. So how do you change that fan behaviour? How do you encourage them through engaging with them and get them into the venue earlier to maximise your revenues that you can get as a result of that? That might mean you change and move some of your infrastructure to accommodate that. That might mean that you have to put other fan engagement experiences on to increase that experience, but get people in and sooner. So I think it's moving from the analog to the digital that gives you that passive data and how you implement that in your operations.
And just another thing just to add on that as well is obviously when you're looking at previous events that have happened, it's really, really important to then be able to understand, how are your fans actually getting to the venue? And that's when you will, dive into, what postcodes are your fans coming from, using the data from your ticketing providers to really start to draw together a story of, do we have the right transport solutions in place? And then how do we actually influence our fans to come to the venue in the way that we want them to come? That's where we really do look to, look at apps, travel demands, travel planners, and you can actually manipulate those to really push your fans to come the way that you want them to come. Looking at your walking routes, looking at activations on that, and all of that really does have such a big impact on the venue operation, stopping those bottlenecks, making sure that you've got, a staggered approach to the venue, and of course, looking into your partnerships and having your brand activations and really elevate the fan experience from that perspective as well. So it really does embed into each other.
I think as well, one of the important things is to reach out to your partners. If you're a venue and you're taking on a new diverse market, if you're a venue and you've come into the concert world, and I've worked with a number of venues across the year, sports venues, to reintroduce concerts into those venues, then actually if you're on that route map, then you've got to reach out to the other people on that route map who are more experienced than yourself. I did Pink at Anfield, and it was one of the first concerts in 10 years at Anfield, but I knew the team up at Hampden really well, and they'd had her before, so whilst you're engaging with the promoter all the time, you're engaging with your transport partners, you're engaging with your other local authority partners, you should be engaging with other experienced venues, and that's why we've got these networks. We do the same at football. We reach out to the other safety officers, because there might be something that you've came across that they haven't. That's what building your network's all about. But going out and seeing Harry Styles, another completely unique one. Those venues. And Coventry was one of those, actually. They were in the second year of that tour. But actually, and this was before my time, I'm happy to say I wasn't there yet. but they didn't engage with anybody in the first year of the tour who had the experience of the kids coming out 2 days early, them not drinking. They weren't drinkers, so that ops and security team actually had way over indulged in safeguarding. Not that it's not an important issue, but they had absolutely, they were overzealous in it to a cost to them. They were overzealous in their signage. They were overzealous in their security. They're one of the most compliant crowds that I've ever worked with, hugely. In fact, when I was on that tour in another stadium, we couldn't get them in the stadium because they were all lining up so nicely, and we're like, get in, you're snailing in yourself, actually go in the door. So they were waiting for each other. They had, on the front line, they self-number, so. And there's loads of fan bases that do that. Bruce Springsteen, take that. Those women have been camping out for years, and and they self-number, and they all know each other. So you, as the safety officer, you've got to facilitate that and go out. So if you're a new venue on that market, which there's lots of them, you have to engage with the more experienced out there, because it is a big shift. It's a mentality shift for your own staff, and it's a mentality shift for your stewards. It's so interesting to me here that they're not actually allowing the rugby supporters to drink. How they're going to cope with that, I've got no idea in the stands. I almost want to stay on to come to the game to see it, because that's embedded in their nature. It's somewhere like Murrayfield, when they go from rugby actually to the rare occasion that they do football, and they don't let the supporters in. That's a different culture shift. So as a safety team, you're so responsible for that. So these trainings and the data, we're monitoring data constantly. We're monitoring the data up before the event, at the event. We're watching flow rates constantly. Medical. It's all about data. Actually, I think people just don't realise how much data we need from a safety and ops team.
Fantastic. Now, something I love talking about is the fan journey. So, what does a typical fan journey look like for the current venues, and what challenges does this present in terms of safety and operations? Scott, would you like to go first?
I think it's very varied, right? Each venue, it's going to be very different, but a lot of the challenges that you will find at each venue are going to be very similar. We touched on a few of them earlier. How do those fans arrive? What does the infrastructure and network look like? I know Gillian will say that the fan journey starts before they even buy a ticket or even considering coming to your venue. But if we're concentrating on the specific journey from their home, from the street to when they get into their seat, it is very varied. And I think that some of the challenges that they face is trying to making that as frictionless as possible. I think that the demographics of fans and the demands of fans are changing. And depending on the fan that you get, and I've spoken to Ben about this, even just whether people will take a digital ticket or a paper ticket, and that's going to be different across age groups, but it's also across demographics. I was in Singapore last week, and every single K-pop fan had their tickets in a ring binder, in a plastic wallet that they were getting out. Katie's looking at me like I'm mad. That they literally were at the gate taking their tickets out. Talk about compliant crowd. They were the most compliant crowd I've ever seen. They were so organised, they self-numbered, they sat themselves in the line. So I think the fan journey is going to be, it's a complex one. It's important that it's linked together, and that it's not just the physical integration potentially of assets, but it's the operational integration of those assets that make up that journey, and understanding what that looks like.
Ben?
Yeah, I think we talk quite a lot from an operational standpoint about actually, when our job is done correctly when it relates to a fan journey, it means that almost nobody recognises that we were there. In fact, a good day for us is when nobody talks about us at all, because it means that everything's worked exactly as it should do. People have arrived, they've got in exactly as they should, they've got to their F&B, they've found their seat, they've had a really good experience. And so it's almost a bit of a funny one where you almost want to blend into the background, actually, from an operational standpoint. And so with regards to how that relates to the fan journey, I think it just comes back to that frictionless approach. And that comes down to understanding, going back to all the data that you can gather from events that you've had, understanding where people are coming in, what their general travel habits are, what their habits are when they arrive at the stadium. I mean, we'll know, and I'll just touch on football again, that fans can be incredibly habitual. They'll arrive at the same time, they'll go into the same gate, they'll sit in the same seat. And so sometimes changing those behaviours can be a bit of a challenge. And so again, I think it just comes back to what I mentioned earlier about just making sure that whatever technology and infrastructure decisions you are making, you're making sure that that allows you to continue to be flexible and equally allows you to continue to remain open-ended and integrate. So any changes that you do want to make along the line, if you do want to change ticketing provider, improve security, increase fan experience, add a fan zone, for example, you've got systems in place that allow you to do that and don't mean that you have to make significant changes either technologically or structurally to allow you to do that. So making sure that you're just making flexible decisions, I think, is probably the best advice.
From my perspective, you're absolutely right. The fan journey starts well before a fan even thinks about buying that ticket. But for the purpose of today, we will stick to the operational element. An interesting one is if you look at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, one of the biggest challenges that they have in the Middle East is once you remove football alcohol in football, which is one of the biggest drivers, right? Once you remove that, what does that mean? So essentially for the World Cup, a lot of fans were, going to the venue incredibly late, which poses a lot of challenges, right, in terms of the transport, infrastructure, getting through to the turnstiles and then that venue experience. So that goes really back to what I'd spoke about previously in terms of really understanding who your fan is, where they're coming from, what their intentions are, and then using, whether it's a venue app, travel demand, utilising your partners and sponsors in terms of brand activations to get them to the venue earlier for that staggered approach. In comparison, for the FIFA Women's World Cup across Australia and New Zealand, very strong female demographic who were extremely passionate, young families, and actually they were at the venue 4 hours before they were supposed to be. So, that fan profile, their needs, their wants, their expectations, and really using data and insights, working with partners, stakeholders, local authorities, transport providers, all of that plays a really key role in delivering a really robust fan journey.
I think one of the things that our venue in particular has been incredible at doing that is because that we've had these multitudes of sports. We were originally, a rugby venue, and rugby's been very, very good at fan engagement for a really long time, actually. So we've been able to incorporate that and try and do it with football. We do find that, again, we've had situations this season actually where our digital tickets haven't been working. So we've gone back for 4 games to actual print from ticket office and posting out, and actually having that. So that ticketing journey that you think is going to be easy actually isn't always easy, and it can put a real spanner in the works. So four games in for the first start of the season, we went back to old style Boca printer tickets. Nothing was working on the turnstiles, and even our VIP experience, we were having to, again, nothing was digital. We were out meeting them in the car park, bringing them in as well. So it's about that flexibility and just being able to turn on those different systems and actually then flexing up your staff to be able to deal with those as well. One of the things that we're going to do for the women's game is actually put fan support out in the local train stations. We've worked with West Midlands to get free transport across the whole region for that period so that we can bring people in shuttle buses, and we've extended that shuttle bus service right further out with Coventry, right into Warwick, etc. It's half term, it's an evening game, so again, we're trying to adapt from the journey, the initial journey. The FA want a ticket, they don't want digital tickets. So again, we've had to gear up the club, ticket office, and to work with our partner Ticketmaster to have that combination. So you're bringing it right, and as we spoke about earlier, when we look at the journey, it's not just the journey in, when we originally spoke about this, we spoke about the Oasis concerts, which, I bet everybody, was sitting at home saying, right, well, I know my husband and my daughter both texted me and said, what stadium have we to go for? I said, anything other than Heaton Park. There's no way I want to stand at Heaton Park. No, I don't care how much I like them. Those were what stadium, anywhere. But for us, we're a bit like this with the England game. It's a 1 of 4. We're 1 of 4 games. So do you want to come and see South Africa with us, or Germany or the USA at Wembley? So, when we give the customer this amount of choice, we have to be prepared to be ready for them to make that decision, and that, across the board.
So our final question today, and I think this brings everything together, is what role does the workforce engagement play in ensuring consistent safety standards and an impactful experience?
I will kick off with this one. So I loved yesterday that Robert from SSE Belfast, talked about the human element. So, I've implemented multiple fan contact centres and used AI technology to mitigate a lot of the churn that can come into a venue. And whilst it's wonderful, we can't forget about the human element, both from a back of house, a fan contact centre, but also a front of house perspective. So the human element is, who are you as a venue? Who are you as a brand? What's your values? Why would a fan want to go to your venue over another, just, as Claire has said? And it's your people, right? It's having people who have purpose, who have an environment that they can absolutely thrive on. And I can't even begin to tell you, the results that I have seen in terms of when you really give your frontline team purpose and they are really engaged and they're engaging with your fans, what that looks like. And the other thing is, oftentimes venues will use contractors, right? G4S, etc. I'm a big advocate to really embed them into the venue, and it's not, we have an internal front of house team, we have contractors, you are one team. So it's really important from that perspective. The other side of it is the financial and the commercial, right? Which, let's be honest, is really important. If you are continually having to re-recruit, that costs a lot of money. If you're continually having to train your staff, that costs a lot of money. But there's also the other element of it, which is the reputational element, right? Fans, when they're not happy, will absolutely go to social media. They will put those reviews on Google. So it really does have a bigger impact other than just training. It's something I very strongly believe in, which is why it's a service that we provide. I hate the word training. I just think it seems a bit dull and very quality standards. So we absolutely advocate to build proud brand ambassadors. And as Ben says, when you deliver an incredible experience through your people, it's so seamless that people don't even realise it, which is really important.
Yeah, I think we spoke before, and this is almost an extension of a conversation that was on stage here yesterday, which is the relationship between the people, which are ultimately integral to a fan experience and a successful operation, but then how that those people dovetail with the technology that you implement in your venue. And I think there's always been this kind of scary idea that the technology is going to replace the people. And I think certainly everybody in this room understands that that's never going to be the case. So I think, how does the technology become an enabler? How does the technology enable your people to do the job that they were put there to do? And so something that we encounter quite regularly is where if you've got inefficient access systems, ultimately your stewards are there to try and manage crowd control, safety, ensure that everybody is in the right place at the right time and that everybody is safe. But with inefficient access systems, you tend to find that stewards just become ticket troubleshooters. They're on the radio constantly just trying to solve problems for fans, whereas if you can implement the correct technology, actually fans can self-serve for the most part, and again it gives you that flexibility that if you've got a 3 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday with majority middle-aged men coming to a football match, and then you have a gig or a women's game the next week, the right system can allow fans to self-serve because it's self-explanatory, and then that just allows your stewards and your front-of-house staff to do the job that they were put there to do, which is creating great experiences. So I think it's very important to make sure that any decisions that are being made at a venue like CBS or something like that is that the people are still put first and foremost, but you're making technology decisions and infrastructure decisions that are enabling your people to do the job that they were put there to do.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree, right? There's never, in my head, and I had a conversation yesterday with someone in the evening where, you know, we were talking about the role of technology and where it's moving to. I can never see a future where in a security screening environment there isn't a human element. It just, in my world, it just doesn't work, right? Someone's got to be there to act on what the technology is telling you to do, ultimately. So it is about enhancing that experience, both for the fan and actually the workforce, right? Because what we find when we go into venues is that they love actually working our technology, retention becomes easier, they're there for the long run. They actually prefer then, especially when you've got transient workforces that might work across multiple venues. You know, they're stewarding at a football club on a Saturday, but then they're working at the events venue on a Tuesday night. If they've got a conflicting shift, right, and they've got a technology that enables them to do their job more effectively, more efficiently, and actually with a smile on their face, and they don't have to become a ticket checker, they're more likely to probably choose your venue to work at than the other one, right? They work where they're happier. They might work where they can earn more money, I get that, but they also work where they're happier generally. You know, selecting technology as an enabler to make that human interaction more pleasant for the fan, more pleasant for the person that's giving it, is actually really, really important.
Yeah, I think it's certainly from a safety perspective. So I've been at the CBS for just over a year, and I made sure that I had 2 other safety officers. We've got more resilience than we've ever had at the stadium. And within that, one of them has an events background and a concert background, similar to myself. And the other one comes from a safety and security background as well. So and everybody in my team has had their level 5 crowd safety management qualification over the last year as well, because that's what we're there to do. We're doing crowd safety. You know, I've got a completely different team that do safety across the venue and health and safety and general health and safety. On a live day, we're about crowd. I also took away the turnstile managers this year because people should be able to self-serve, and whilst we don't have the best technology at the moment from a turnstile perspective, actually we've got to train people, we've got to train the customer on how to use that technology and how to use their phones. So I took those 3 roles away, and since I've taken them away, every single game we've had people in on time. So I don't know what those people have been doing, but it seemed to be a hindrance rather than a help. And then we've became I'm going to use the word training, but our ambition is to become a full training centre, because at the moment we are, in hospitality, we are 100% in-house staff, and in stewarding we are 95% agency. So whilst we will always use agency in our business, what our ambition is actually to have a centre of excellence, so to become a centre of training excellence, because in my venue, you can work a stadium and you can work an arena. So you can work live entertainment and you can work sport. So we're actively working with our stewarding providers and giving them not quite open access to our venue, but I've got a training centre on site. So for me to get the best out of them, I've got an open door policy that they can come in, they can do familiarisation when it's viable to do so, but on some occasion they can do it on a live event. And that gives us a better relationship with our providers, and it gives their staff a better understanding of our venue, and it makes them very much a part of our venue, even though they're agency. The real focus for us is customer service and safety, so we do a whole load of initiatives. We retrained all of our staff on the ECR, Event Control Room Management this year. We've done 3 simulations, and we're working with, again, all the blue light agencies to do a major simulation across our venue next week, actually. So again, it only benefits us as a venue and a provider, and it gives me, I can now go out to say to the FA and say to promoters, we've got more resilience than we've ever had in our stadium. You don't need to bring in extra expertise because we'll do that for you. We're happy to do that. We're happy to take on that responsibility because I've got the confidence in the people that I work with, the people that work our core team, and also our infrastructure as well to make it happen.
Does anyone else have anything else to add to that?
I think just one thing from my perspective, and it was actually mentioned in the previous discussion, that venues are no longer just competing against each other. We're living in an economic climate now where actually we are competing against restaurants, cinemas, etc. So one thing that I really empower and challenge venues is, not just to follow the trends, not just to slightly get, ahead of the curve, but actually be the leader on the fan experience throughout the full journey, right? Because everything interlinks, whether it's technology, whether it's services, really interlinks in that fan journey and experience. So yeah, that would be my biggest challenge is, we're not just competing now against other venues, but it actually is, restaurants, cinemas, bowling alleys and everything else. So your fan experience strategy has never been, more essential and important.
So yeah, look, it's very clear that balancing safety with the fan experience is key as venues evolve, and technology and workforce engagement will be really crucial moving forward in this process. I think that's all we have time for. Do we have time for one? No, we're off. That's it. She said no, we're off.
Katie did this.
Yeah. We just wait for the big coat hanger. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today.